podcast as well, right?
Yeah, I do Monster X Radio, so yeah, kind of set up for it.
Yeah,
Cool.
cool. How long you been doing that for?
To that, well, just very beginning of 2013.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I was doing a little homework on you, and
Uh-oh.
says here you were born in Scotland. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And then you moved to San Diego. How old were you when you moved from Scotland to San Diego?
Moved in '93. I was 13.
Okay, so you didn't get the
That's why
Scottish
you don't have an
accent.
accent there.
Oh, I lost it a long time ago. Integration. The
Right.
girls loved it, and the boys liked to fight when they heard my voice. So
Okay.
I got done. I got sick of fighting, so I decided to try and lose the accent and get an American, bro.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where at in San Diego did you live?
Ramona, East County, San Diego.
Okay.
It's near Julian and near Poway, Escondido, El Cajon. If you're familiar with San Diego at all, yeah, East
Yeah, I
County.
spent a little time out there actually. I like San Diego.
I do.
I actually lived out there for about a year, a long time ago, and then my wife and I got married out there about 6 years ago. So out in La Jolla.
Okay. Oh,
Yep,
La Jolla.
so-
Yep. That actually. So my wife, she went to school down in San Diego. She's from Oregon.
Okay.
But, we got married down in San Marcos, but she lived in La Jolla for a while. So
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Nice area.
beautiful,
Expensive area.
ritzy. Yeah.
Yeah. What part of Oregon is she from?
She's from the Dells.
Okay.
Nice.
The Dells. When we moved, we actually moved up to Oregon in 2008 and lived in Beaverton, just outside of Portland, for many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you do a lot of squatching when you were there? I'm sure.
Yeah. Once I landed in Oregon, I was in the Mecca.
All
I'm in
right.
Washington now, but Oregon's it's close to my heart for sure.
Right. Are you living there near the Olympia forest there?
North of Olympia and south of Seattle. I'm in Belfair, Washington, so it's on the Kitsap Peninsula. So it takes me about 2 hours to get to our hub up in the Olympics, to where our main hub, Bigfoot hub, is.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
So how old were you then when you moved to Oregon from San Diego?
Let's see, Oregon. Oh man, so I moved in. I moved in 2008 to Oregon. So, man, I'm trying to remember.
Were you interested in Bigfoot at that time, or at what age and what point did you get interested in Bigfoot? Was it your encounter or
Oh
what
no,
was it?
I was in when I lived in Scotland. I was interested in cryptids in general, and you name it, Loch Ness monster, Yeti. Interested in Sasquatch then. When I moved to San Diego is when I really, in '93 is when I really started getting more interested in it, because I was here in the States, and I eventually, once I got my wheels, I was driving up and down California, checking out reports, talking to people. So yeah, from '97 is really when things kicked into high gear for me personally. And when I moved to Oregon, everything was a perpetuation of getting really engrossed in the subject matter and hiking and camping, exploring. So 2011, when I had my encounters, when things were solidified for me that they were out there, and that's when, after, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I realized that this is not a one man. I was running solo for all those years, just doing my own thing, what I called research at the time. And then I got involved eventually with, the likes of Cliff Barackman and Derek Randalls, and eventually joined the Limit Project in tail end of 2012. And so, I've been at it a long time. I will say that I think the best stuff that I've been partaking in was after 2011. That's when, like I said, I got a hold of people and did the whole group thing, and I learned so much. It was crazy.
Why don't you tell us about your encounter? Go into it, explain what happened, and then we can go from there and talk more about the Olympic project.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2011, I'm an avid outdoorsman, fisherman, hiker, hunter. I'm a real, fishing is one of my hubs. It's been one of the things of my life that I've always partaken in since I was a wee lad. So I've always been a fisherman. So when I got to Oregon, started a new job, I met a couple of guys one was an Oregonian, avid outdoorsman, loved fishing. So we did a lot of that. The other coworker, Ian, who's from Boston, he was none of the above. He just wanted to experience it. And so 2011, the three of us make a plan to go up to the Mount Hood Wilderness, and do some exploring, some hiking, and some high mountain lake fishing. That was our goal. High mountain lake fishing. I was into Sasquatch, definitely. Ian was not. He's from Boston. He's not an outdoorsman. He hates bears, and we'll get into that. And my buddy Mitch had, heard some stories over the years, but was not really into Sasquatch. So this was purely a fishing trip. And so we pick out a location out in Mount Hood with the plans of spending 3 to 4 nights out in this area, hiking, exploring, camping. And so we make our plans. We go out there. We drive out to the hiking trail. We hit the hiking trail with our gear. We make base camp at one of the lakes out there that we were going to be fishing, but that was going to be our base camp to launch into these 7 other lakes in this area. And so we do that. We hike out. We make our base camp. We check out the lake that we're at, and we decided to go and find one of these other lakes that we were going to be fishing. We got down there early on a Friday, and so once we were set up, we had the whole day before us. So we went out on the trail to find this other lake, and we hike up this huge hill up below this ridge line, and then eventually we get lost. We end up on this ridge line, the 3 of us, up on this ridge line. We're way off trail. We're going through huckleberry, just a mess of stuff. We knew we were lost. As we're going through this off trail ridge line that was above the lake that we made base camp at, we started noticing bear sign and all that, which is no big deal. There's a ton of black bear up there in Oregon, as is Washington, Northern California. I run into bear all the time, and most of the time they either run away or you don't see them. And so as we're up on this ridge line, hiking lost, we're arguing amongst each other, and trying to find our way to the trail to find this lake. Ian, who's from Boston, I didn't realize this, but he literally packed a couple of pots and pans to bang. So as we're going down the trail, I'm leading, Mitch is behind me, and Ian's in the back. Here's Ian every 30 seconds, a minute, banging a pot and pan. And I said, "What are you doing?" I'm chasing off the bears. I said, "We're making plenty of noise out here. The bears already know we're here. So don't worry about it, Ian. The bears are not going to come up here and eat you."
Yeah.
We were packing. I always carry a weapon when I'm in the woods. Nothing Sasquatch related. Between my time in California and Oregon, I've bumped into a lot of animals and a lot of weird people. So I always carry a weapon. Better looking at it than for it, I always say. And so Ian with his pot and pan was driving me nuts. So I actually had an extra weapon, so I handed that to him, which was a mistake, and we'll once again get into that later. But just to calm his nerves, I said, "Hey, take this, just put it on your side. You got it." And so we're hiking, we're lost. We end up hiking that day about 17 miles, just completely off trail, on trail, off trail. Towards the end of the day, we finally find the lake that we are supposed to be fishing. And by that time, it's getting late afternoon. We know the trail we're on. We know how to get back to camp, but we're losing daylight. So instead of fishing that lake, we decided, well, we know where the lake's at. We know where the trail's at. Us knuckleheads will find it tomorrow, not get lost like we did today. And so we head back to our base camp, and we make it there. And it's only 2.5 miles away, so we made it there in pretty quick time. Make it back to our base camp. We collect a bunch of firewood. Ian was adamant that he had to have a big fire to ward off any animals that might come into camp. We hung our food and all that good stuff. We eat a meal. We do a little fishing on the lake, and we talk about our plans for the following morning, some of the lakes we're going to be hitting, and we go to bed. We go to bed about 11:30, around there, 11:30. And basically how we were camped was we were in a kind of a pyramid formation. I was at the tip of the pyramid or triangle. Mitch is close to the lake, and Ian's a little bit closer to the hill. There was a hill behind us. So we were kind of down in this little depression in this large valley with the lake. Beautiful. I mean, just beautiful, all to ourselves. And we're only spread out a few feet apart. So we go to bed, 11:30. Around 1:32 in the morning, I wake up because I hear what sounds like 2 rocks being smashed together. And it's repetitive, just boom, boom. And it's coming from a distance, but getting closer and closer. And I'm listening. I'm thinking, what the heck is that? And my buddy Mitch is awake apparently. He goes, "Hey, Shane, you awake?" I said, "Yeah." "What is that?" So I don't know. And so I'm trying to rationalize in my brain what the sound is that's getting closer and closer. Could it be elk, antlers? It's August of 2011. I was trying to think, okay, are elk out right now, in this area? I'm thinking, is it some crazy raccoon? Because it sounds like two rocks just being smacked together, and it's getting closer and closer. Well, eventually, as Mitch and I are discussing this, and I'm thinking, what could this be? It gets fairly close to our camp and stops. Now, we're surrounded by Douglas fir, big old growth Douglas fir trees, a lot of debris on the ground, and I hear something just prodding around in this debris. It sounds sounds bipedal. I couldn't really be sure, but it sounds like it's just breaking branches, kind of circling up and around our camp. Ian's still asleep. Mitch and I are listening, and that goes on for like a minute or so, and then that rock clanking starts up again, and it gets further and further and further away. Whatever it was had come in and then stomped around and then left. So I eventually fall asleep. Mitch falls asleep. We wake up the next morning, and we talk about it a little bit. Ian thinks we're messing with him because he didn't hear anything that night. He was sound asleep. In fact, he was snoring pretty much the whole night. And so he's think we're messing with him, and we're not. But we're out here for a fishing trip. We have multiple lakes at our disposal, so we decided to make breakfast and head out, and we did. And we made it to the lakes that we aimed on making it to without getting lost. We fish, we catch fish, we bring the fish back later in the evening to our camp. We cook up a meal of fish. We collect more firewood, build a fire. We talk about our plans for the following day, because we're going to be out there, 3 to 4 days. That was our goal. This is, going into the second day, we're talking about our plans for that second day third day, going into the third day. And so we had picked out a few lakes that we hadn't been to yet. So, okay, well, let's get up early and let's hit it hard. Some of them were a little bit further out, maybe 3 miles or so. So we, once again, build that fire. We go to bed, 11:30. 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. Once again, I hear that sound, and it's coming from a distance, and it's getting closer. It sounds like two rocks being smacked together repetitively, and it's getting closer and closer. Mitch is again awake, and he whispers over to me, "Are you awake?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "It's back." And I said, "I know." So we're both trying to, in our minds, figure out what's going on. It's really, really odd. I've never heard anything like that in the woods before. And I spent years and years and years in the woods. And I'm thinking, what the heck? It's back. Well, that rock clanking sound gets closer and closer, and it stops. About the same distance it did the night before, maybe a little bit closer. And then what I see is, is that stomping around in the brush again. And Mitch is hearing something off to his left. I'm hearing something off to my right. So I'm thinking, could there possibly be two of something out there? And it's just stomping around, breaking branches. Sounds a little more, I won't say aggressive, a little more adamant. It was just crash, crash, break, break. Really sounded heavy, sounded kind of bipedal. Couldn't really be sure. And that went on, and then it stopped. And I'm just sitting there. My heart's pounding in my chest. I'm thinking, wow, something's back again. What's this about? And it's deathly quiet out there. When that's not going on, you could hear a pin drop out there. There's no wind. It is completely dead quiet. That stomping around stops. Maybe 30 seconds go by, tops. And then I hear wham, wham, wham. There are 5 of the most powerful percussive knocks. You call them power knocks, call them whatever you want. Something's hitting a tree, and it's hitting hard because it echoed through this little valley we're in. And I could feel the vibration underneath my tent from it hitting the tree and going through the ground. Mitch is quiet. I'm quiet. Ian is now awake, and he's going, "What the beep beep is that? What's going on?" He's
Getting his pots and pans out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm no, he didn't. But you never know. What I was worried about at the time was when that had happened, he's freaking out, and I'm thinking, I gave that guy a weapon who has no business having a weapon. It's middle of the night. Well, we were sitting there after that happened, and I'm literally almost petrified with fear. I won't lie. I wasn't. I was just scared. I'm laying there, my heart's beating. I can feel it in my head, and then I hear something come through the trees that it's arcing down from the hill above where Ian's camped at or tents at, and it's hitting the branches. It's coming down, it's coming down, it's coming down, and then thud, hit these branches, and it thudded right next to my buddy Mitch's tent. And Mitch is right next to the lake. He's the closest to the lake. He has a mud pile in front of his tent, and that thing landed right in this mud pile. Big thud. And he whispers over me, he goes, "You know what that was, right?" And I said, "Yeah, that was a rock." And I knew it was a rock because the weight and the force and the way it dropped, I knew it was a rock. And now my wheels are spinning. Now I'm going, oh, wow. Wow. Between those 5 powerful knocks and that rock coming into the camp, I'm thinking we're in trouble because this has escalated from what happened the night before. This thing came back the second night, and it's escalated. So I'm thinking, what's going to happen? Well, Ian's freaking out, and I kept telling him to shut up, be quiet. And I gave him rustle around his tent. I'm thinking he's going to shoot somebody. He's going to aim that weapon in the dark and shoot somebody. So I decided that I need to get over to his tent, get the weapon away. But I really did not want to. I didn't want to get out of my tent. I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to get out of my tent. I didn't want to look outside my tent. But I decided I had to. So rustling around, I could hear Mitch breathing heavy. He's not saying anything. Ian's freaking out, rustling around. He won't be quiet. So I decided to get out of my tent. So I unzip my tent, and I'm looking around, and I'm thinking to myself, please don't see anything. Please don't see anything. And as I'm looking around, scouring, I see movement almost directly in front of me, about 40 feet away, 30, 40 feet away. No, it's closer to 40, but I'm seeing movement around me. And I'm looking, and what I see is I see a hand. There's this large Douglas fir that leads up this trail, and I see a hand on the front side of this Douglas fir. I see a hand, I see an arm, I see a shoulder, and I see something coming from behind a tree, swaying back and forth. The hand's still not really moving. It's mainly shoulder and head, and I just see something swaying back and forth. I see a head, shoulders, and it looks massive, and I assume it's looking right at me. And I don't know if it heard my zipper, the tent, or me rustling around, but it's looking right at me, and it's just swaying back and forth. And like I said, I could see the hand, the arm, the shoulder. I didn't really see a neck, but I could see a head. And I'm looking at this thing, and that Douglas fir is a big tree, and this thing's it's massive. I just stare at it. I don't know what to do. I didn't want to move. I didn't want it to be able to see me, but I'm standing there or sitting there in my tent. And after it wasn't very long, a few seconds, it takes its hand off the tree, drops it to its side. It turns around and walks up this trail up the hill. And that was it. I waited and waited and waited. I didn't hear any rock clanking. I didn't even hear it walk off. It was all just visual. I never smelt anything. I didn't hear any vocals or anything. This thing was just quiet, and it disappeared. And I didn't want to get out of my tent. Ian had settled down. Mitch is breathing, but he settled down. And I just sat there. All three of us, I think, just sat in our tents till daylight. And once daylight hit, we packed up collectively without saying a thing and just hightailed it out of there. We just picked up our stuff and hightailed it out of there. Barely talked about it on the way home. It wasn't until probably a week later that we actually started discussing it. And Ian really didn't talk about it. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't even want to go back into the woods ever again. Not sure that he ever has. Mitch and I did discuss it a little bit. And then subsequently, that occurred. So what that did for me was it solidified the existence of Sasquatch for me. I mean, this thing was massive. In my head, I was thinking, I'm just on a fishing trip. I'm not out doing anything Bigfoot related. Never found anything in all my years that I thought we'd call Bigfoot evidence. I talked to a lot of interesting witnesses, but here I am, middle of nowhere, and the Sasquatch came to us. I wasn't knocking. I wasn't screaming. Now, I did a lot of research on that area after the fact. We spent a lot of time in that area after the fact. Found a couple of interesting impressions, and maybe recorded a couple of possible percussive sounds, some knocks. I never saw anything again in that area. And I spent months in that area thinking, I know where they're at. I know how to prove this. I just have to have the equipment and this and that. I did my research on the area and found out that it was actually a kind of a Bigfoot highway. There was loads of reports, people talking to rangers about crazy bears throwing rocks at them, people being chased out of the area, roars, bears. You name it. Yeah, crazy bear. So I'm like, wow, the Sasquatch are here. At least that time of year they were. And I started thinking in my head, well, why did we have a 2-night encounter? Why did it come back? Were we blocking its access to the lake to get water? And that made sense for a while, but then I really started delving into it and thinking in my head, well, what did we do? We got lost up on a ridgeline, way up on this ridgeline, off trail. We were seeing bear sign. Maybe some of it wasn't bear sign. We're up there yelling at each other. We're lost. We're off trail. We're urinating. We're leaving our scent everywhere. My running hypothesis is that we got up on this ridge where there was a Sasquatch or Sasquatches, and we're unpredictable. This isn't a place where people generally go. There's no trails. You're going through bush. You're bushwhacking. I think we disturbed something, and the first night it came by to say, you disturbed me. And the second night, get the heck out of here. You didn't take a hint the night before. That's my running idea. But basically,
so it's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah. Long story short, that solidified the existence of Sasquatch for me and led me down a different path than I was going at the time as a solo investigator. After months in the area, and I wasn't really having any luck, and I thought for sure I'd see it again and this and that, and it never happened. I decided that I need to start reaching out to individuals that are that live in this area, that have been researching these areas longer than I have, because I'm a transplant up here. And that's what led me to reach out to people like Cliff Barrickman and Derek Randalls of the Olympic Project.
Awesome. That's nice. An awesome encounter, Shane.
Heck yeah, that's amazing.
Question for you, a couple questions for you real quick before we continue on and talk about the Olympic Project. Did all three of you guys see the creature? Was it just you?
Just me. I was the only one to unzip my tent. Mitch said he was just laying down in fear because he didn't know. Well, he didn't know, neither of us at the time knew what we were dealing with. He thought whatever it was going to come in and smash us. Yes, right. We were armed, but it didn't. It just, you don't shoot at something unless you know what you're shooting at, period.
Right.
And he was afraid, and Ian sure as heck wasn't getting out of his tent. So I was, and honestly, if it weren't for Ian, my fear of Ian and what he was going to do with that weapon, I probably, honestly, would not have unzipped my tent. I wouldn't have looked out there. I was curious, but at that time, I've been around bears. I've been around angry elk, a lot stupid people. This was something different, 1:32 in the morning, came back for a second night. It really disturbed me at the time. I consider myself a pretty brave guy and all that, but I felt pretty small in that scenario.
Yeah. There's a lot of sightings that go on up in Mount Hood. There always has been, and there still are, and I think they'll continue to be. That's some really thick, dense wilderness up there. But like you said, you guys probably came into an area that most people don't go into, and you kind of stepped on their territory a little bit. It was pretty dark when you saw this thing. Could you see any details of the face though, or anything like that, or was it just more like a shape?
You know what? I don't want to implant stuff that, at the time I thought maybe I saw eyes. Now, so it was a fairly bright night, but also Ian had built up this fire so huge that it was still crackling and glowing pretty good. If that fire wasn't going, I probably would not have seen as much as I did. All I could make out was, I could see what looked like hairy. I could see the fingers on the bark and the arm and the shoulder. Dark. I couldn't tell if it was black, brown, red. I could just make out the basic shape. But the arm on the front of that tree, when the fire was hitting the back of that, or the front of that tree, you could see the arm and the hand very clearly, and the shoulder and the swaying motion. Its head, there was a branch. There was a branch above it. I couldn't tell if it was knocking the branch or not. But later on, going back, and there was heavy depressions there. Nothing discernible. Just a lot of weight had been standing there at some point in time. But that branch, given the measurement I took, that whatever I saw was between 7 and 7.5 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to ask on your way out, did you have enough of your wits about you to look on the ground to see if there was?
Nope. I did come back shortly thereafter, but no, at that time we wanted to get out of there. I was the driver, so Mitch and Ian, they wanted out, so we just packed up and hightailed out. I drove them both home they both lived outside of Portland, so. It was from where I lived. It was, good 2.5 hour drive, because you're way down 5 miles down a logging road, and then you hit the trail, and then you're way off trail. So we were just thinking about, let's get out of here. We had no cell phone reception. There's no cell coverage in that area, so I couldn't even make a call. So it was just get out of here while the getting's good, because if it comes back a third night, it may not be as, as nice. I don't know. We were just, guesstimating.
Yeah.
I think you guys got caught its hint. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So did you you told those guys what you saw then?
Eventually I did. Yeah. I
Okay.
didn't tell them like on the way home.
Mhm.
When we do these trips, we usually, we're jovial, happy after the fact. We talk about our catch, our fish catch. We go have some breakfast somewhere. No, it was just get out of here. I think everybody was nobody slept. So we were just tired and just wanted to get home. I don't remember discussing anything with any of them until, a few days later. And even then it was kind of minimal. And like I said, Mitch, he was eager to talk about it as I was, but Ian, we never had a conversation about it. And then we never actually went back out to the woods with him again. Mitch and I continued to go out, but later on.
Shoot,
So I made a decision. Yeah. Well, he's from Boston. I mean, talk about an experience for almost a first-time camper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So do you think those guys believe in Bigfoot though now, even though they didn't see one?
I don't know what Ian believes. I really don't. I can't speak for Ian. Mitch, I know that Mitch was kind of interested. I shouldn't say interested, but he's aware of the phenomenon because he had a girlfriend years prior, and actually only about 10 miles away from where we were camping, maybe 12 miles away from where we were camping, who saw something on the side of a road that she thought was a Sasquatch. But that was his only introduction or experience. I think, I think Mitch is pretty much, I haven't talked to the guy in years, but I think he's a believer in it. Interested now, but he got really jaded back in the day because of the whole Rick Dyer thing, 2008, when I moved up to Oregon. That's why I met these guys. And I was already into Sasquatch, but Rick Dyer came out with this whole hoax thing. And I knew at the time it was, but he kind of had hope that maybe there was something to it. And so, but after that night, I mean, Mitch is not a hunter, but he's a fisherman. He's been out in the woods, Oregonian his whole life and never experienced anything. This rocked his world, intrigued him, but he's probably more of a believer than not. But he didn't have that visual like I did. So there's always that little bit of, well, I don't know what it was,
Mm-hmm.
How far away from you do you think you were from this creature behind that tree when you saw it?
About 40 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, almost from my tent, 35, 40 feet.
Close enough. Definitely close enough.
Very close enough. Like I said, I never heard any. If this thing ever made any vocals, I never heard it. But then again, I'm not kidding. My heart was in my head. I could hear just the pounding. And maybe there was more than one. I don't know. I definitely did not smell anything. Neither did Mitch. Neither did Ian, because we had to ask him later on. Never heard any sort of vocal. Just the percussive sounds, that rock coming to camp, and then actually seeing the thing and it stomping around and all that, hearing that. That was it.
Okay. So after that, you got involved and got a hold of Cliff Barrickman. Sorry. How'd you find him? How'd you track him down? What made you get in touch with him? And then what happened from there?
Yeah, I was aware of Cliff. In fact, what I had done was Cliff was speaking. This is when he was, during the Finding Bigfoot days, the beginning, really, almost.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff was doing a speaking engagement down in, or I think it was Oregon City, down in Oregon, I believe. I forget top of my head. It was at some large brewery. He was doing a speaking engagement, and so I decided to go and listen to him. I knew of Cliff. I never met the guy before. Never had any correspondence with him. But went down and visited with him during his speaking engagement, and he happened to be talking about at that time, which was fresh, was a piece of video, trail cam video he had obtained from a couple of policemen from the Clackamas area, and honestly, that's not too far away from where I had my sighting, and so which is part of the Bigfoot Highway, Joel Beilhardt's book. So this individual that was moving past his trail camera, I thought was very interesting, different than what I saw, and it was kind of blurry, but it was moving fast. And anyway, I got in conversation with Cliff. It was a very intimate environment when Cliff was giving this presentation, so easy access to Cliff. We had talked, and he eventually got got me hooked up with a partner of his, a BFRO investigator, and he came out to the location. Not Cliff, but this BFRO investigator came out, and we recorded a couple of knocks, and he told me about the area because he was kind of aware of some of that area. So kind of gave me a little more to go off of. And so Cliff and I kind of kept up a little bit of dialogue. And then I reached out to Derek Randall's of the Olympic Project, because Derek at that time was doing these public expeditions. I thought, well, you know what? I'm really curious to see what the Olympic Project's about. I was familiar with them, kind of kept up with them, but I also wanted to know what Derek was about and what they do on these public expeditions. So I went to one of them and started. Derek Randall's and I hit it off right away because we're both into the same things. We're avid hikers and hunters and fishermen and all that. And Derek just really, a lot of what he was saying resonated with me with research, because everything I did up until then I thought was quote unquote Bigfoot research or Sasquatch research. But listening to Derek and some of the other individuals like David Ellis and Tom Baker of the Olympic Project and James Milling at that time with the Olympic Project, I realized that what I was doing was not, it was decent, but it was not real research. I wasn't documenting enough. I wasn't looking at the moon phases and the barometric pressure and the elevation and all the stuff they were doing. And it really opened my eyes to a broader picture here. And so Derek and I had a long conversations. I came on a couple of public expeditions, and then he said, "Hey, you're a perfect fit for this organization. Would you be interested in joining us?" And I said, "Yep, sign me up." And so that's where I've been running with them ever since.
Cool. I've seen you guys both on several documentaries. I know you were on, what was the one I was trying to think of the other day, or saw the other day? Sasquatch Among Wild Men. Is that
Oh yeah, Darcy Weir's Sasquatch. I've done a few. We're rather picky. I've done the Darcy Weir with Sasquatch Among Wild Men, and then worked with Seth Breedlove a few times on two different, the Discovery and on the Trail of. Yeah. We're very picky, honestly, the Olympic Project, and as many other organizations and individuals get reached out by multiple productions, we're picky because I've done, I don't know how many of these Zoom calls or interviews with these production companies, and I'm not about the TV. And actually the Olympic Project as a whole can care less about the TV. We're all about a platform to discuss something that we're very passionate about. It's not about the money, because we don't make money off of this. It's about a platform, and people like Darcy Weir and Seth Breedlove, they keep it real. They don't ask you to change anything. They don't ask you to embellish anything. They keep it real. They don't do any funny editing. They don't miss, there's nothing disingenuous there, like a lot of these production companies do. And that's why we turn them down left and right. And we're not interested in the series either, because it takes away from our time actually in the field, being stuck behind a camera and this and that. So working with those guys, I'm very proud of what they put together and proud to work with them. And that's kind of our little stick there. If we do anything, it's going to be short and sweet and to the point, and more documentary style with no embellishments. It's just real. It's like Deadliest Catch. You'll have captains cussing at you, swearing at you, get off my deck sort of thing. And that's us.
Okay. Yeah. We've heard so many times where a lot of people are complaining about that we've interviewed that have been on TV shows or even other podcasts, where they said, they've edited what I'm saying. They've moved words around. They didn't put in there what we discussed or what I thought, they kind of made it look a total different thing. But for you to say that's cool to know that they filmed those that way, and that we're watching something more genuine, because a lot of these things you don't know. There's a lot of documentaries out there, and some of them you just don't know, how genuine they really are, as enjoyable as they are regardless. But so yeah, Derek's been on there. I've seen you guys on there too. What are you guys doing nowadays with the Olympic Project? I know that I've never been to the Olympic Peninsula. I heard it's beautiful. I heard it's awesome.
That's definitely
what's it like there?
Yeah,
mine too. What's it like there, and what are you guys doing now up there?
It's the Olympics to me it's not just home, it's paradise. It really is. For some, they don't like it because it's basically a tropical rainforest. It's not so much tropical, but it's a rainforest. It's definitely a rainforest. Growing up in Scotland, where I get a lot of rain, it's very similar. So I just naturally migrated this way. So Southern California is beautiful. The weather is amazing, but it's nothing, and it's got its beauty. But, places like Yosemite and Mount Hood and the Olympics, they just hold their own special beauty. When you step into places like that, you're overwhelmed, and this vastness of wilderness and mystery and intrigue and exploring. And so the Olympics, I moved up here up to Washington in 2017, based on I wanted to be closer to the Olympics. From Portland, it took me about 5 to 6 hours to get up to the Olympics, and so I wanted to be closer. I also wanted to be closer to Olympic Project members, and specifically, I made the move based on speaking of what we're doing right now, which we've been pretty much working on the last 5-6 years now, is a nest study site that we've been working on that a timber cruiser came across. So I wanted to be closer to that. I moved up to the Olympics.
Wow.
To be closer to actually, be in an area where I can go out and just study this. I'm out in the woods 3 or 4 times a week and sometimes longer. I wanted to be on an area to study, these nests in the Olympics, because they were so profound to me. To me, it's one of the most amazing things I've ever worked on or seen. So I wanted, fortunately my wife agreed, and, she can work remotely as we both can. So we decided to move to Washington to be closer to the Olympics, be closer to the hub. And, I'm a core member of the Olympic Project now. There's a core group that leads the Olympic Project. And so I had a lot more responsibility going into this. It was a no-brainer for me. I have to be a part of this. This is, to me, a very scientific endeavor. It should be something that science looks at, as John Bindernagel used to say, this subject matter should be less taboo. And I think some of these finds should be less taboo. That science would be interested, regardless of what's making nests or leaving impressions. Science should be more interested in this. There's a lot of questions there. They're not all answered. Yep. There's not a gazillion hoaxers out there, So when something profound is found that's unexplainable, it should be looked at. So that's I'm not a scientist. I consider myself a citizen scientist, as much as one can be, because science to me is based on observation. I think that's the most fundamental thing with science is observation. Nobody was born out of the womb a scientist. They had to observe, and then when they observed over a period of time, they became educated on something, and the expert observer, which down the road they became an expert in their field. They weren't born with a doctorate. So I consider myself and many of the Olympic Project members and others out there doing really great work outside the Olympic Project, individuals, citizen scientists. They're observing, they're documenting, they're cataloging. They're spending a lot of time in one area. They're not ambulance chasing, which was kind of like the old thing. People still do it, and God bless them. But I think it's important to stick in one area. And so I moved up to Washington to stick in one area, to focus on one area, and specifically work on these and study these ground nests and see if we could find more and what was making them.
Mm-hmm.
What else have you guys ran into through the years with the Olympic Project? What other kind of things have you found, or maybe you've heard some things or actually seen some things? What kind of stuff you guys acquire over there?
We have over the years acquired multiple, foot impressions. Recently, within the last 2 years, hand impressions, lots of hair, unknown primate hair, as it's been viewed under a microscope by the correct people. And we do have some thermal footage I think is of value. Both recorded and some unfortunately not, back when our therms didn't record. But we have some good thermal footage. And I think just our documentation on sightings and reports, elevation, time of year, that sort of stuff, I think is really important. We have a lot of documentation where we can, we're looking for patterns of predictability, where's the best spot to have an encounter, possibly or a sighting, what time of year, what elevation, what month. So the documentation is something we've been collecting over the years. And yes, we have, as individuals, we also, one of the big things we've been working on, David Ellis has been working on this for a long time, of the Olympic Project. He's kind of our audio guru. And Chris Spencer has really stepped up and taken the helm in this as well, where we set up these long-term units, these long-term audio units that record upwards of 30 days. And we don't just listen to the sounds, but we actually visually look at them on a spectrograph. So we compare them to known animals via our own recordings and via, things like the Macaulay Library of Sounds, which is one of the biggest libraries of known animal sounds. And so we visually look at it and compare it. And when there's very suspect stuff, we put that into that's the unordinary pile. We have coyotes and all these different animals, but then we get stuff that doesn't match anything out there visually speaking. Your ears will play tricks on you, but it's very important to work a certain area and record everything, every known animal, and document those known animals. As I often say, animals make a lot of weird noises that we haven't heard. If you or I walk into a room and stub our toe at 2 a.m, we're going to make sounds we didn't know we were capable of making, right? So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Done that.
Yeah, animals are the same way. They make noises that we're just not familiar with. And so even though we utilize the Macaulay Library sounds, not every sound is recorded because every animal can be a little bit different. So you have to keep those recordings. You don't just go, oh, that's a coyote, trash. You document the stuff. You keep that in a library of sound, and then you can compare it later. Especially if you're in one area, you're like, well, it's not a coyote. I mean, if you work in an area long enough, you'll start naming the coyotes or the bears in these areas because you're going to record them. The elk, you're going to record them continuously. You're going to hear them. They make the same signature sounds. So that's another important aspect to what we do, and I got to give major kudos to David Ellis and Chris Spencer because they spend countless hours loading the audio and looking at it visually, and they found some very compelling, very interesting stuff, specifically lately in the nest area, the nest site area. So I mean, in the nest area we don't just have audio recordings, we don't just have hair, we don't just have foot impressions and hair or in other impressions, hand impressions. We have the nests themselves. We have rocks that have been obviously scored together, knocked together by something. Obviously, you can't say it was Sasquatch. Can't say the Sasquatch made nests, but you start looking at the bigger picture here of all this unknown stuff, including this unknown behavior with the nests. Nests historically have been found. These aren't the first nests ever discovered. They're just the biggest number of nests discovered and the most studied nests. There was nests found in 1967 in Bluff Creek during the Patterson-Gimlin. Not many people know that. Patty, if you're familiar with her, she looked like a female. Well, was she making a nest or did she make a nest? Because that nest was above Scorpion Creek, which feeds into Bluff Creek, which is a stone's throw away from the Patterson-Gimlin film. But there was a nest discovered there by a timber surveyor. There's been nests discovered in other parts of Northern California, Klamath area, Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, Alaska. So there have been other nests found, just not documented properly, photographed properly, or vetted or anything. So, but they all look and sound very similar to what we're dealing with. And a lot of times they happen to coincide with a sighting, a Sasquatch sighting, or a footprint. And so eventually you got to kind of start putting those pieces of the puzzle together and go, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, you were talking about, that earlier. I agree. It's like science has a lot of information in front of them. And I saw the documentary where you guys are finding these nests, and they're very interesting, and how you guys were like laying in these things, showing how the creature could possibly lay there and sleep. They're kind of big straw nest things that are bunched up around trees, right? They kind of like to lay around a tree for cover maybe or something like that.
So the initial nest area, they were when this timber surveyor that came across their initial nest site off this ridge, and these nests were on a finger or a plateau. If you think of the ridge kind of like your knuckles, well, there's these fingers or plateaus that come off it, and these nests would always be at the tip of these plateaus, going down, basically down in a very steep ravine to a seasonal salmon creek. Well, these nests, the original nest site, this guy came across them and he kind of freaked him out. He was a timber surveyor. He's been doing it for 27 years. He's bumped into bear, cougar, you name it. He's bumped into everything. Came across these nests, and he thought, man, what the heck is this? This is weird. Freaked him out, and he held it out there, and eventually got a hold of Derek and a couple of DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and his boss that owns his timber company. Well, these nests, at least on the original nest area, the original finger, they're in a V formation. So you got the point nest is what we call it, which is the one that leads right down the hill in a triangular formation. That'd be the point. And then you have a couple of nests on this side and a couple of nests on the other side. V formation, very strategic. Coming down into there, all these nests are made out of huckleberry. Nothing but huckleberry boughs, broken from a foot off the ground to over 9 feet off the ground. No claw marks, no teeth marks. Something with opposable thumb definitely had to make these nests. And that's genuine consensus. But what you have here is this V formation. And kind of lost my train of thought there. You got this V formation. With, like I said, we have a Top Gun pilot that's a part of the Olymp project, former Top Gun pilot. And when he first viewed these nests, he thought, man, that's very military-like, very strategic. And so we documented them. We mapped them out. On the outskirts of this nest, you have nothing but miles of huckleberry, up to 9 feet tall. When you're hiking in this area, it's not, you can't run through. You're going to trip and fall. Half the time you're crawling, you're falling over stuff. So it's kind of like, the way I look at the nest area is this. You're looking at a house. You can see the walls. You can't see inside the house until you open the door. Well, when you're going down into this nest area, you see a huckleberry, like a wall, just a wall. When you walk into it, you're inside the house or inside the nest. Everything is stripped. All the huckleberry leaves are plucked off. All the boughs are broken off. And you got these nests. The ground has been walked on and plucked. It's the ground up there in general. It's you got salal, which is a thick ground cover. And then you got the huckleberry and you got the Douglas fir trees and other plants. But you would not be able to see into this place until you walked into it, not via the canopy because it's so thick. We try to fly drones, it doesn't work.
Gotcha.
And so when you get in there, it's like a giant room that's been emptied out. All the huckleberry branches either snapped, clipped, or broken, twisted. The huckleberry, all the leaves are plucked off. So you have this room where every nest can see every other nest, and they're multiple sizes. It looks like, regardless of what made it, it's almost like a family unit because you have smaller nests of 3 to 4 feet across, to nests that are 6 to 8 feet across, almost like a bathtub in shape, oval. You have in this one area, today we found 2 bush nests, or practice nests as we call them, where they mirror what's on the ground, but they're built into the huckleberry bush themselves. And it's like a little tiny practice nest. And the reason I call it a practice nest is because not only do they kind of mirror what's on the ground, they're made out of huckleberry, but Derek Randalls did a lot of homework on these bush nests and discovered that, gorillas, for example, that's how they teach their young to build nests. They sometimes build them in a nest. Like the little ones will construct a practice nest. They can't, it's the weight. It won't hold the weight, but it's like a practice nest. We found 2 of these, one in the initial nest area and then one on one of the other fingers with about, 3 or 4 other nests. So it's really, really profound. And then, you add in everything else that was discovered in this area. I mean, we didn't find bear impressions. We didn't find claw marks or teeth marks. When something's snapping, sometimes even a subtle, little, tiny huckleberry branch, 9 feet off the ground, without pulling it down and snapping the whole thing, takes something just to, snap it, break it, twist it. A lot of intelligence went into making these nests.
Yeah, that opens up a lot to my mind, hearing what you're telling me. Brian and I say this, the more we learn, the more confused we are. But talking about that and the strategicness of the nest, well, talking about the nest in general and how you guys came across these and how they're set up makes a lot of sense on how they stay hidden a lot more. They can probably hear things coming from a very far away that takes a lot of getting through those. Like if you guys were to go rushing in on them, it's not going to happen because by the time they hear you, they're gone. They're strategically placed on that point of the mountain where they can go up or they can go down.
Exactly.
It sounds like. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also kind of opens my mind to the fact of how they're, much more able to stay hidden, so to speak. So that's crazy stuff. What's your overall thoughts on Bigfoot, Shane? Do you think they're at all paranormal? Do you think these things are just a creature that's been around since a long time before humans? What's your whole opinion on the thing?
Yeah, what I'm not into, I'll be honest with you. I spent a lot of time in the woods. I mean, in multiple states and in some cases multiple countries. I've never personally experienced anything paranormal. And with Sasquatch, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, acts like a duck, I keep it that way. It's not a duck, it's a Sasquatch, but because here's something with Sasquatch, and I don't try to put Sasquatch in the box, nobody put Sasquatch in the corner sort of thing. That's just not me. I do keep an open mind. I really try to, I just don't, let my brain fall out. So what I like is this with Sasquatch. I mean, having a podcast, interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, had my own experiences, talked to many witnesses at symposiums and conferences. I can never rule out anything because I don't know everything and I don't know much. But everything that I thought could have been paranormal when I'm in the woods, I've always explained. It's always been explainable. Example real quick is we were out with a group on a hike and somebody saw an orb in the woods and I'm, wow, that looks like an orb. It's kind of a bluish color. Well, long story short, instead of just viewing it and filming it, I actually hiked down to it and ended up being a Firefox mushroom. It was glowing in the dark at 1 a.m.
Okay.
But from a distance, it looked like a freaking orb. I ain't lying. Mm-hmm. I was impressed, but we did our due diligence and figured it out. Now, is there paranormal stuff out there? Sure. I don't know. Sasquatch, though, It's reported to do roadside crossings, which I believe is because it eats roadkill. I think how many reports that I've taken in or read over the years where Sasquatch is seen picking up a deer or a raccoon. And so that's natural. It's reportedly raids trash cans. It defecates, it leaves hair behind, leaves impressions. It is elusive, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, it acts. It's got some human characteristics, and it's got some very non-human primate characteristics. So that's kind of where I leave it. I don't know. Is it related to Gigantopithecus blacksea? Is it Australopithecine? I don't know. What I do know is they exist. They're real, and I think they've been around. The Native Americans talk about them. So I think truly they're just small in number. I think they're smaller in number, and that's why they stay so elusive. They're very smart. They're ninjas of the forest. We put us as humans, we're very arrogant. We think we're the smartest things out there. And I don't think Sasquatch is as smart as humans per se, but in their environment, they're way smarter than us. They're geniuses compared to us out there. So it's relative. It's relative to your environment. So Sasquatch is going to be far more equipped to avoid us and live in the woods with no special capabilities, just being absolute stellar in their environment. The echelons, the top. And that's what they are, but small in number. And so they can stay elusive. I don't, if they breed, it's probably like an orangutan. It's probably every 6 to 8 years. And I don't think they're breeding all the time. Finding, you got to find, you got to have a male and a female and all that scenario. But if they're like orangutans and, it could be every 4 to 8 years, who knows? And this is all, spitballing, spitballing there,
right.
throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. But, I think Sasquatch is a flesh and blood terrestrial creature that is just equipped for its environment. It is some sort of primate, hominid, but doesn't need the use of tools or fire to survive. It is doing very well by itself. That probably makes nests occasionally for birthing purposes. I don't think they make nests. Maybe they make beds occasionally. But that's the running hypothesis with the nest, is that this is either a nursery scenario or a birthing scenario. We spent, after that first year, we came across 23 nests within the first 6, 7, 8 months after checking out this area and hiking and exploring. And then for the next, 4 or 5 years, we didn't find nothing, traversing multiple areas that had all the same kind of setup, the same MO, western facing slope, seasonal Salmon Creek, Huckleberry. And then Todd Hale of the Olymp Project and myself, based on some patterns that we were looking at, the tail end of February of 2020, we came in on something making a nest. We didn't see it, but we were very close to seeing it. And here was this huge mound of huckleberry that was collected probably that day. And, that was based on our opinion that these nests, the original nests, were made in either the tail end of February or March. And so we'd start getting out there and looking for years. We weren't finding anything. But we also thought maybe these nests aren't made all the time. Maybe every couple of years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And lo and behold, 5 years later, or 4 years later, basically, we find a brand new nest in the making where we almost caught the culprit. But what we did, though we didn't see it, it approached us, it retreated, circled around behind us. Subsequently, we found hand impression in this area, hair, a huge pile of huckleberry, multiple 14-inch impressions, which, if you're familiar with Patty, from the Patterson-Gilliam film, she's about 14 inches. So maybe another female building a nest in this area. Just throwing that out there. Who knows? And then we got some of the best audio I think we've ever recorded in this area from that nest area, that new nest area, because though what made that nest never came back, at least into that nest area, there was multiple things going on after we discovered it that in some cases didn't sound happy and made a lot of very interesting vocals and percussive. So there's just a lot going on in this area. Even today, we got some really cool audio, and we've kind of backtracked a little bit here because when Todd Hale and I walked in on that nest being made, I actually got a little weird about it, because I thought, this is what you want. You want to find these nests, and to find one in the making it blew my mind. I always thought maybe we'd find another one, old. We found something actually making one, but we disturbed it. And if indeed these are nests being made for birthing purposes, we disturbed a lot of work. I mean, this huckleberry pile was tremendous. It took a while to collect this stuff. And so we disturbed something, and now it either had to go make another nest somewhere else or whatever have you. And I thought, well, yes, part of our goal is to collect data and all that stuff, but we're not out to prove, the Olymp Project's not out to prove the existence of Sasquatch per se. Most of us know it's real. So I don't want to disturb something making a nest. I want to come in after fact and then collect whatever I need to collect for the Olymp Project's purposes. If we accidentally walk into one, you're darn right. I had my GoPro running at the time. I was ready to go. If this thing walked out of the woods, it was going to be on camera, but it never did. It knew just how far to stay back without getting caught by sight. But I don't want to disturb something if it's making a nest. And that time of year, February, March, it's still pretty cold out there. It's wet. Sometimes you still have a little bit of snow. I do have a conscience, for these things now. And even it wasn't a Sasquatch. Say a bear's making a bear bed. I don't want to disturb it. I'm going to be and let it do its thing. It's settling down. So there's a little bit of, like I said, I do have a little bit of a conscience. So moving forward, I do want to find more nests. I definitely do. We get, so happen to walk into one, make one, sure. But we're not going to do that right now in the months of February and March. We're going to wait till April when we think these things are done making these nests. And like I said, I don't think they make them every year. I think it's every so often. Not sure if this is one of those years, but we will find more nests. I guarantee it. But I want to do it after they've been used. And we have plenty of other opportunities to capture these things on either film or on therm, possibly down the road. I shouldn't say plenty. I guess that sounds a little arrogant. But we do have opportunities to possibly get these things on therm or on camera without delving into right in the, basically opening their door and putting a camera there or sitting on a nest. I think there's other ways to go about that. Really do.
Yeah, without invading their territory, I don't blame you. I mean, wait till they're gone and go check that out. Do you guys do you have any pictures of those, or are those on your website? Is it olympicproject.com?
olympicproject.com. It's been a little stale. We don't have any pictures on the website. Right before, we just didn't want to get arguments with people. We would share them with academia and whatnot. We didn't really share anything on Facebook because everybody's got an opinion, and then people want you to answer them, or if you don't answer them, then you're hiding something. So we just don't go down that road. Now that they've been shared on some of the pictures have been shared on some of these documentaries with Seth Breedlove and whatnot. Mm-hmm. We'll probably throw some on the Olymp Project website because my goal, ultimately my goal is. I want to know if other people have found anything like this. I want to know if, and when people are out trekking, not they're going to be trekking in these areas, but if they happen to be, maybe they'll come across one, and then we can, and maybe in another state, maybe in Canada. I want to know about it. I want to know where they located. Is it the same sort of setup? Is there more than one? Document it's not evident. Is there hair in there? So I want other people, other investigators or hikers, and that's the thing too is. Most researchers, investigators, and just people in general, they stay on trail. We're human, right? So we stay on trails, are man-made. We follow game trails. Not many people, unless you have a job like a timber surveyor, and it's always somebody, almost 9 times out of 10, it's somebody involved in a timber company that comes across these nests. It's not your average people, hikers, fishermen, hunters, explorers. These are areas that people don't trek into because there's no trails. It's nasty. You're going to run into bees. You could run into a bear. It's just so thick. These are not fun areas to hike.
Right.
But for those people that are in it and want to get off trail on a ridge or somewhere like that, and they come across something like this I want to know about it. And so that's why I don't mind sharing some of these things in documentaries for people to watch and consume and digest. And, that's why the only time I really share anything other than, those few documentaries we've done is at symposiums or conferences. I'm going to be doing the Kelso Longview event here at the end of the month down in Kelso, Washington. And yeah, I'm going to share. I'm actually, I'll tell you guys first, I'm actually constructing a nest. I'm going to construct a nest. I got this huge platform built. I'm going to construct one of the larger nests and bring it down there for people to visually see, because pictures and video only do it so much. Mm-hmm. I want people to walk up there and go, I want them to see what was discovered. Just one of many, but construct a giant nest, not embellish anything, exactly like we found it, bring it to the symposium and let people witness it and take pictures and whatever.
That's cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's that way, it's people are, especially nowadays, are more visual. So,
Right.
something right there. It's an actual model of what we came across. I think it's going to be more impactful. And then if someone's out in the woods and they come across something like that, or they know somebody that's seen something like that, because there have been nests found in history. Just we need better documentation. Because eventually, I think there's going to be others found, and not just by the Unlimited Project, but other organizations, groups, or individuals. And I think it's going to really start to shape up really well for this phenomena.
Yeah, that was my next question, and we won't keep you too much longer and let you get out of here. But unless Brian has anything else, do you think that Bigfoot will be classified by science anytime soon or any day at any point? And do you think there's cover up involved? If not, or do you think there's cover up involved anyway?
I do definitely believe Sasquatch will be proven to exist at some point. There's just no doubt in my mind. At some point, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 10 years. There's no doubt. There's more and more people being comfortable talking about this. There's a lot of people out there that are still kind of uncomfortable talking about it, but they're holding on some good stuff. So I definitely believe it's going to be proven at some point in time. And it probably won't be proven by necessarily a Bigfoot organization or group. Could be, a homestead, someone living in a cabin. It could be someone that hits one, but eventually, there's no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind, and so that's why we just collect as much data as we can for that day, in case it does get proven that we can just lay this out there for the general public. But not conspiracy, but I guess you can call that. Is there a cover up or anything? I don't think me personally, I don't think there's a giant cover up. I'd be shocked if certain individuals in certain departments didn't know about Sasquatch. In fact, I know since I know some that do, but I know of some that do, that just won't talk about it. Look what happened. If you guys are familiar with John Meinzinski, a guy, a wildlife biologist that basically got told to, got thrust into it, and then when he started getting results, they told him to shut up. No more. You lose your job. And that happens across the board. I know John Bindernagel came into scenarios like that. And all these academics like, Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, they get a lot of pressure, but they got the cojones to keep with it. Now, are there certain individuals or factions of the government that know? Possibly. Maybe, absolutely. I really don't know. But I don't think there's a general whole giant, you're talking about Canada and the United States. That'd be pretty huge. And I've talked to Border Patrol agents, because everybody's always asked me, Sasquatch doesn't know borders. You're darn right they don't. They don't know, United States to Canada. No, of course not. And you know how hard it is to probably try to get into Canada or somewhere else, especially nowadays.
Yeah. Bigfoot forgot his passport, right?
Yeah, forgot his passport. He hasn't taken his, his CV test. So, I think there's people that know of it, but they're just, it's not necessarily a lot of times they're like, oh, I don't know what that is. And then sometimes they're probably just told to shut up about it. It's just not their job. Or maybe there's something to it. I don't know. I just don't think there's a giant conspiracy to keep it hush hush. I think there's factions that know about it, especially the upper, I used to work. Here we are. People talk about timber companies all the time. Oh, they're aware of it, but they got to cut down these trees. So they don't want to talk about. Well, we just got, we got approached by a timber company, and we have access to this area, keys to lock gates, to travel wherever we want on hundreds and hundreds of acres. Hundreds of acres.
Cool.
No conspiracy there. They're as much interested as we are, and some of them have had encounters.
Yeah, and I don't think they're interested in killing off wildlife in the area. That's probably why they said something.
Yeah, and they didn't know what they were looking at. So we're talking the top of this company, and I've worked with when I was in Oregon, especially on the Tillamook National Forest on the coast, worked with park rangers all the time. That some of them most of them never had an encounter. One or two did, but most of them never did. But they got reports in, and they were interested. But those guys always, yes, they're in the woods a lot, but they always have jobs to do. So they're not necessarily doing what we do, trekking and looking for stuff. They're cleaning out trash cans or taking care of campgrounds, but they get a lot of reports in. No conspiracy there. They would share them with us. So at that level, I don't think there's anything going on. A little bit higher up, who knows? I'd be shocked, like I said, that certain individuals or certain departments didn't know anything. They almost have to. I just don't think they care. Maybe there's other motives there. Maybe, and that's a whole nother conversation. But that's my general consensus. I worked with a lot of these individuals, not at the very top, but at medium to the bottom level, and sometimes they don't want to talk about it. A lot of times they're very cooperative.
I think a lot of people in certain areas of the country see these things a lot more often than what people realize, and they probably just it's almost normal to them. Like you said, it's a routine thing, and they're not going to report it. Maybe some of these loggers have seen things and like, yeah, I'm just not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think I'm crazy. And I think a lot of people have probably seen these nests more often than what they've realized and just not known what the hell they were or thought anything about it. But it's an interesting topic, and you bringing it up, talking to us about that, kind of like I said, opens my eyes to a lot more things and makes a lot more things understanding to me as far as how these things do keep hidden, and maybe don't need any kind of cover up. They're just good at what they do in their environment. So,
yeah, I'll say one. I know you guys are probably looking to go here, but I'll say one last thing. If we can get past our, whether you're a hunter, hiker, or a Bigfoot enthusiast your whole life, or whatever have you, you just knock your arrogance aside a little bit and realize that you're used to understanding known animals. We're talking about something that's not been proven to exist, that's unknown, that maybe doesn't act like a normal animal. Maybe it doesn't use game trails. Maybe it actually likes to hike in the thick stuff. Go try placing a camera on a bush that's facing another bush where something may come across. It's not going to happen. You're just going to get 1,000 shots with the wind blowing another bush. But that's where I think these things move. They move off trail. Yeah, they hit a trail here and there, but predominantly they're off trail. They're in the bushes. They're in the thick stuff. They're going to the nasty stuff. That's how they can survive and thrive. In
places where we are not.
Exactly. So if you think of it like that, and you think of that Sasquatch is small in number, but very intelligent, very adept to its environment, better than you or I, easily. And who knows what else is out there? I mean, really, who knows what else is out there to be discovered? Things are still being discovered today, and there are a lot of scientists actually interested in the subject matter. Definitely, what I like to call, and we work with them, we talk with them through Project Zoo Book. Amy Boo's Project Zoo Book. They're in the Sasquatch closet was what I call it. But they're knocking at the door and they're asking questions and they're intrigued. So there is a whole future of academic individuals, old and young, that are coming into this fold that are asking the right questions, and they would make Dr. John Bendernagel very proud. This subject matter is becoming less taboo.
It is.
It's gonna, it's taking time, but yeah. So it's upwards and onwards.
And that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yep,
absolutely.
Get the word out there.
Yeah, more and more people seem to be okay with talking about Bigfoot than they used to be, or even you're not looked at as crazy anymore. It's just kind of a thing nowadays. You either do believe or you don't believe, and people just don't really make such a harshness of it. But Shane, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us and
this was great.
Discussing your encounter and talking about the Olympic project, man, and we appreciate it a lot. So,
Brian, Todd, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
We get out that way a couple times a year for work in Oregon. Maybe we can meet up out there sometime.
Yeah. Call me. yeah, definitely.
Maybe we can make it up that way and check out the Olympic Peninsula for once.
That'd be great.
Finally, that'd be awesome. One of my bucket list items for sure.
Yeah,
and for the guests listening, you got the OlympicProject.com out there. You guys, where else are they at? Are you on Facebook?
I do a Monster X Radio podcast. We took a little bit of a hiatus, but we're getting back at it. And then you can find me, Shane Corson, on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. The Olympic Project is on Instagram and Facebook, and we have obviously the .com. So
cool, man. Well, I'll be watching for you on some more documentaries out there as well, Shane. So
me too, for sure.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you
for taking the time. We appreciate it.
All right. Take care, man.
Thank you.
Shane.
See you. All right. Cool.